We are now fully live. Oti and welcome everyone. Welcome to our weekly online Dhamma group with Venerable Dhamma, who is joining us from the Sirimangalo Meditation Center in Sri Lanka. During this first hour, we will begin by taking the 5 precepts together, and then we will go into our reading, where the second hour will be for questions and answers. So we will begin today's session by taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. This is the same formula as it was back in the Buddhist time, and it is a minimum standard for us to declare ourselves as a Buddhist and to further progress ourselves towards Nibbana. Is there anyone that's in the Discord group that's willing to lead the precepts today for us?
I would like to.
Thank you, Martin. You may begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Ahang Bante Ti Saranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachami. Dutiyampi Ahang Bante Ti Saranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachami. Tatiyampi Ahang Bante Ti Saranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Isarnagamanang nithitang.
Ama Bante.
Parnatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Dinna dana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Kamesu micchāchārā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu Miccāchārā Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Musāvādā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Savada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Surameraya majjapamadatthāna veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sura Meraya Majja Pamadatthana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Imani pancha sikkhapadani sīlena sugating yanti, sīlena bhoga sampada, sīlena nibbutiṃ yanti, tasmā sīlaṃ visodhaye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So we will now move into our reading and continue our study of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta that was commentated by the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw. We're going to be reading, taking turns in alphabetical order, 2 paragraphs as usual. And feel free to ask any questions in the chat while we're reading, if you have any. Today we'll start off with Austin. Austin, can you start us off today, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, loud and
You don't
clear.
have to just ask questions in chat. If someone has a question in the group, you can just, that's why we take a pause after each paragraph. Feel free to interject in between any paragraph. Don't interrupt a paragraph, but after any paragraph.
To recapitulate, 1. The material body that forms the basis of thinking while thinking is the aggregate of attachment to form. The pleasant or unpleasant feeling about the thought is the aggregate of attachment to feeling. Or remembering the object of thought is the aggregate of attachment to perception. Urging and inclining the mind to accomplish thinking, saying, or doing is the aggregate of attachment to mental formations. Just being conscious of thinking is the aggregate of attachment to consciousness.
So we're at the part of the sutta dealing with suffering, the truth of suffering. And at the end of the truth of suffering, he says that in brief, the truth of suffering is the 5 aggregates of clinging. And so now he's explaining how that is, how one can cling to any of the 5 aggregates. The point being that you don't suffer except for without clinging, because the second noble truth is going to be that the cause of, or the origin of suffering, that which causes suffering to take place, is craving or thirst. So suffering can be anything if you cling to it. Other thing this does, just to recap, is remind us that reality is the 5 aggregates. or the reality is experience. At every moment of experience of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and feeling and thinking, the 5 aggregates arise. So he's just finished with thinking, which is the 6th. So he's gone through all 6 of them.
Andy, I have a question, if you don't mind me asking. So, number one, the material body, is there any way that you could explain it in example that forms the basic of thinking? Thank you, Bandy.
Yeah, well, with thinking, it's a little bit different. The process of thinking is different from the process of the other ones. So he says it like that the clinging involved with thinking is still involving the physical because you need the physical in order to think. That's not really actually true, but sorry, that's not the proper way to say it. During the process of thinking, the physical basis for the mind is involved. For he have a body, physical body, so for them it doesn't take place, but for a human being it is involved. He's just trying to be complete. And he says that, I mean, another way you could talk about this is thinking, an experience of thinking can involve the physical when you think about the physical. Because anything can be any of the aggregates can be a Dhamma, can be an object of thought. You can think about the body. So during the process of thinking, the physical can be involved in another way, not the way he's talking about here, but another way when you think about the body. If you think about something physical, which of course we often do, if you think about some possession you own or a person who you have a relationship with, obviously we can cling to them, to that physical thing that you're thinking about. But, I mean, maybe that's not, I don't know how correct that is to say that that's actual physical body. I mean, what he's saying is a little more literal, that during the process of thinking, there is a part of that process of thinking is the body. I mean, not really in any meaningful way, but again, he's just going for completeness here. Basically, the body is present. If it wasn't, then you'd be dead and you wouldn't be a human anymore.
It is very important to realize the true nature of thought by being mindful of it every time thinking occurs. Failing to take note of it and thus failing to recognize its true nature will lead to attachment of it as I, mine, as permanent, pleasant, self, etc. People these days are cling almost constantly to mental objects. Such attachments give rise to becoming upadana pachaya bhavo in accordance with the law of dependent origination. In every new becoming, there awaits old age, disease, and death, accompanied by the suffering of grief, lamentation, pain, sorrow, and despair.
Upadana Pachaya Bhava is literally part of the discourse or the teaching on dependent paticca samuppada. What it means is that being or existence. Well, yeah, Bhava is complicated to translate, but basically, I mean, literally, it means existence or being. Being is probably the most literal way, but it doesn't mean being. It means being in a new being. Because of upadana, which is clinging, with clinging as a cause or as a condition, there is being. But being is the arising. So, I mean, a practical explanation of what this means is when you crave for something, tanha paccaya upadana. Because of tanha, craving, there is clinging. And then because of clinging, there's becoming. So when you want something, you fixate on it. It just happens. Because of fixating on it, you make a decision, you do something. So there is a being, there is a rising. Now, in our life, this happens all the time. During our life, this happens all the time. For example, suppose you want a new car or something new, right? You want it and you make a decision and you take out a loan to get the car. This is a new thing that has occurred. This is an example of bhava. Something has come into existence, this loan. And I use the example of a loan because it's significant. You've changed your life. Your life is no longer free from debt. Now you're in debt, and because of that debt, you're going to suffer. I mean, you go into it willingly usually, and you anticipate the suffering, and you're okay with that, but it's unavoidable and true that you've gone into debt, and there's going to be suffering involved with having to pay it back, usually. Because that's similar to at the moment of death, when you make that kind of decision, you crave for something, you cling to something, the decision-making leads to what Mahasi Sayadaw is talking about here, this kind of bhava where it actually is significant. It's a new becoming as a being, maybe as a human, maybe as an animal, maybe in one of the lower or higher realms. But it's a new thing that, as he says here, is going to become a whole new thing that gets you into a lot of new kinds of suffering and pleasure and happiness that ultimately sets you up for having to do it all over again and again and again and again.
However, if mindfulness is developed on each occurrence of a thought, its true nature will become evident. Having thus known its true nature, no attachment to it will arise. Hence, no active processes for new becoming will occur. When there is no new becoming, the mass of suffering represented by aging, disease, death, grief, lamentation, etc., is completely eliminated. This cessation of suffering as a result of mindfulness of each thought as it occurs is momentary. However, if the practice of noting every thought is continued, gaining temporary cessation on each noting, by the time the noble path becomes fully developed, the mass of suffering will have been completely eradicated. Thus, while occupied with the exercise of noting, rising, falling, sitting, touching, if any thought or idea intervenes, it should be noted as thinking or imagining.
It's a little bit poorly translated there in part, I think. That's definitely not what he was saying literally. It just doesn't make a lot of sense in English. So if it's a little bit confusing there, what he's saying is that, so the first, however, at the beginning of the paragraph is in contrast to paragraph before, where if you're not mindful, then seeing, hearing, and so on leads to feeling, like, and a pleasure, pain, or neutral, and then there is a craving for an attachment to that feeling, which leads to clinging, which leads to decision making and becoming. But if you're mindful, with mindfulness, then there's no ignorance. Because there's no ignorance, there can be no craving. Because there's no craving, there can be no clinging. Because no clinging, there's no becoming as a result of it. So there will still be more. It doesn't mean you cease to exist in that moment, or the life ceases. It means that there's nothing new. You don't take out a loan, or you don't get reborn at the moment of death, if the mind is free from the potential for craving. But the second part is that the however isn't a good translation there. So, but what it's trying to say is that at each moment of mindfulness, there's a temporary cessation of suffering or cessation of clinging, and therefore an avoiding of suffering. So it's freedom from suffering, but that's only temporary, is what you have to read between the lines. That's only temporary. However, if you continue and gain this temporary cessation, not by the time, it's not a good translation, gaining temporary cessation on each noting, once the noble path becomes fully developing, or when the noble path becomes fully developed, massive suffering will be completely eradicated, not been. It's a mistranslation. That's confusing and not accurate. Because the noble path is the moment when it gets eradicated. It's not like if you work, then by the time you get to the noble path, you don't need it because you've already completely eradicated. That's not what he's saying. He's saying that once you reach the noble path, it's no longer temporary. At the moment of the noble path, that temporary cessation is superseded, or is rendered irrelevant or meaningless because of the complete cessation or lasting cessation through the attainment of the noble path. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Some of you might not be aware of what he's talking about there. Rising, falling should be familiar. Rising and falling is the English words we use to describe the expansion and contraction of the stomach, which we use as a basic object of meditation, just because it's very physical, it's quite coarse and gross. So seeing the three characteristics is probably the simplest. It's hard to find an object that lets you see the three characteristics as clearly and quickly as focusing on the stomach, which is why a lot of people don't like it. But it's the Vayo Dhatu, the pressure element of the four elements. So it's part of the physical body, so the very basis of vipassana practice. Sitting, you can also note the sitting. The Buddha mentions this, and it's good to switch objects to give you a challenge, and to break up any kind of attachment or any kind of being lulled into a sense of complacency. Having to juggle objects helps you become more flexible and less clingy. So switching to sitting, you can say rising, falling, sitting. These are the kinds of exercises we give to meditators when they do the at-home course. Those of you who have done or are doing the at-home course have experienced this, that this isn't the kind of thing you need to take up on your own. It's something that a teacher will give you in sequence. We have a whole curriculum. And touching is another one of those things, noting the touching in the body, or just touching parts of the body, sending the mind to touch the parts of the body, to see to observe and notice the sensations in the body as they arise and cease, as they are also impermanent, suffering, and non-self. But this kind of juggling is just a part of, like with any training, you make it more complicated, more complex, more advanced, you could say, just for the simple purpose of challenging the person being trained. But that's very much a part of our technique that he's talking about there.
Bhante, is there any reason why he singles out noting every thought is continued? Like why just the thoughts, basically?
Well, because he's talking about thinking, right? This
Mhm.
is the sixth of the senses. So he's saying if at the moment of thinking you don't note, then all of what he's talked about is going to happen. If at the moment of thinking you do note, because the other thing is that you're not going to sit and wait for thoughts to arise. This is one thing that you don't do in practice. You don't take the mind as your primary object because it's hard to find, hard to catch. Visuddhimagga makes this really clear, and it's a really important, very, very brief statement, but simple statement, but something that's quoted a lot and something that we take quite seriously because of the practical importance of not taking the mind as the object. Buddhaghosa in the Visuddhimagga says, as the physical Dhamma becomes more clear, to the same extent, the mental object becomes clear. So, and he's just said how you should focus on the physical, and he's explaining why you should focus on the physical. So what Mahasi Sayadaw is doing here is he's following that by saying your basic object is going into the body, the rising and falling of the stomach, the sitting posture, or touching specific points in the body. And only when thoughts arise do you then take them as the object. So he's just describing how it would work in practice during the practice of our technique, how thoughts would come into play in your practice. But why he's focusing on thoughts, because this section is the section on thinking.
Yeah, but I was just thinking, like, sometimes you don't have any thoughts if you're just focused on the physical, basically, right? With this rising, falling, sitting, touching, and
yeah, but he's been talking about what you do when this whole section has been about thinking. So he's saying in practice, when thinking arises, make sure you note it because of what he's just said. It threw me at first as well. I had the exact same question as you, but it's quite clear if you think about what he's been talking about.
Yeah, I guess, my English probably is not that good because I didn't even notice the two howevers being confusing.
Yeah, for an English speaker, you don't use however twice. When you say however once, you can't say however again, and it also doesn't make sense why he's saying the second however. But what is missing in the text here is that he's saying it's momentary up until the moment of the Ariyamagga when it becomes. So it's a contrast of those two kinds of cessation.
Yeah, this is a very important section as well in regards to our practice.
It's nice how he always brings it back to the practice. Remember, he has an audience in front of him who is probably most likely an audience of meditators. So many of them understand what he's talking about. Just like us, we're reenacting something very important.
Yeah, exactly. If somebody doesn't understand how our practice works, just reread and reread these sections.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll continue, Bante. The detailed analysis I have made above demonstrates clearly that what becomes prominent at the moment of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking are merely 5 aggregates of attachment. To common people who cannot practice this exercise of mental noting at the moment of seeing, the subject that sees is regarded as obviously some substantial body. The external object that is seen is also regarded as a woman, a man, a substantial body. Likewise with the phenomena of hearing, etc. In reality, however, there is no such substance or mass to form a physical body. Only the 5 aggregates of attachment. Nothing exists except at the moment of seeing, hearing, etc. They become evident only at the moment they occur, and what become evident then is just the 5 aggregates.
So substantial body is referring to the idea of an entity. He's describing an important aspect of non-self. That things that have substance, a person or a thing, even in more abstract ways like a country or a law or a religion, Buddhism, right? These things we give existence to them conceptually, but they never exist outside of our mind. They aren't real. They aren't experienced. Buddhism, these are kind of synonymous. What is real? That which is experienced. Because you can't experience certain things, they're not real. And that's a good definition of real, because otherwise you can't ever, you have no evidence of it. Like if we say, we were to say that people exist, like a person exists, well, you can't actually prove that. You could just be living in a virtual reality space, or the old mind experience. What do you call these things? The mental thought experiment. The old thought experiment is you could just be a brain in a vat. Like we could just be a brain plugged into some kind of machine, virtual reality, basically, that's presenting us with all these stimuli. We don't know that that's not true. So you can't know anything except for experience. And why that's so important, not just on a philosophical level, is because of how it resonates with us. Because experience can be proven, can be, literally proven. You can prove seeing is seeing. You can prove hearing is hearing. You can prove that you're seeing or hearing because it is what it is. There's no refuting it. What you are seeing is totally up for debate. Are you actually seeing a person, or are you seeing a mirage? No. Is it just God maybe tricking you? No. And even if you see God, what are you actually seeing? But seeing is seeing, hearing is hearing, smelling is smelling, taste. And that's important because you can directly observe and be sure of it. You can also be sure of its characteristics, and that's the only thing you can be sure about, and the only things whose characteristics you can be sure about. Is this door red? Is this dog black? We don't know. There's many ways to fake that sort of thing. But is seeing impermanent? Yes. And you can absolutely prove that to yourself. Is hearing suffering? Yes, absolutely. Suffering in the sense that it's incessant and it's not the way you want it to be all the time. It's not capable of satisfying you. It can't last. Yes. And is it non-self? Not under your control and has no substance? Yes. And you can verify these things. Basically, you can verify that it's not stable. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking are not stable, satisfying, and controllable. And that is important. It's because disabusing yourself of the delusions of permanence, satisfaction, and self is what allows the mind to let go. And it can only happen with something that's real, because it can only things that are real can resonate. You can philosophize all you want about this being impermanent or that being impermanent, but it doesn't resonate. It doesn't have the power to cause you to let go, because it's not real. It's not actual experience. So there's no proof, there's no evidence. Your mind just doesn't get it. It's not visceral. in the way that experience is. That's why real is important, and that's why reality being experienced is important. And it's important in the beginning to understand intellectually that entities don't exist. It helps direct your mind to pay attention to what actually it does exist, so that you can see the characteristics of what actually does exist. So intellectually, it's useful. It can be confusing, and some people don't have a hard time understanding this, but as you practice, it becomes clearer. And the intellectual is not so important, but it's useful in the beginning to orientate yourself correctly, to have an idea of what he's talking about here.
Suffering because of the 5 aggregates, dreadful sufferings of new becoming, aging, death, grief, etc., arise because of the 5 aggregates of attachment. As long as these 5 aggregates of attachment exist, dreadful sufferings of becoming, aging, death, etc. will persist. Therefore, the 5 aggregates are themselves dreadful suffering. In short, because there is a physical body, physical and mental sufferings depend upon it arise. Because there is a knowing mind, physical and mental sufferings based on it arise. Therefore, mind and matter, which constitute the 5 aggregates, are dreadful suffering.
But one thing about this teaching that is a little bit of concern is that it's probably unpalatable for people who are not so familiar with Buddhism, newcomers. I mean, it should be unpalatable to most people. This is why Buddhism has a hard time reaching broad acceptance, because we don't want to hear this. We don't want to believe this. This isn't the story or the narrative we want to hear. Be told that life is just full of suffering, that there's only suffering. It's not practically speaking true, right? There's a lot of pleasure, there's even a lot of happiness, especially happiness for Buddhists. Buddhists especially, there is a great amount of happiness in life because of all the good deeds that you do. Kindness to others, generosity, ethics, how much suffering you avoid by being ethical, how much happiness there is. It's the confidence that brings happiness, knowing a good person. That was absent before you took the 5 precepts, and you get a clear sense of ethics, and you say, wow, I actually found a way to be a good person. I don't have to worry or doubt anymore. I'm not killing, I'm not stealing, I'm not lying, I'm not cheating. That's about it. I'm basically a good person. How much happiness, and and of course the happiness from samatha practice, the happiness from vipassana practice. There's great happiness. So it's important to remember for those who find this difficult and find themselves challenged by this, is that first of all, being challenged is good. There is that. But also, Buddha isn't really presenting this to the broader audience of the world. He understood very well that most people wouldn't be able to accept this, that it would be unpalatable, and he didn't even want to teach for that reason. He's teaching 5 people who have come to basically the end. These are people who have been there and gone through all of that mentally, physically and mentally. They've lived it physically and mentally. They've gone through it. They've come to the point where they realize that yes, there is a lot of pleasure in life. There's even a lot of happiness. But it's so monumentally overwhelmed by the fact of having to do it forever, with so much stress and very real suffering, that eventually they give it up. You have to think of this as the truth. The Buddha is telling the truth, and it's challenging, and it's, I guess you could say, controversial even. Although that's not, I mean, it is controversial just because so many people doubt it and disbelieve it and are repulsed by it. But it's true. And no matter what you do, no matter how you argue, you'll never be able to escape that truth. And that's an important way. It's not, shouldn't think of this as something that you have to believe or you have to persuade yourself of. But the Buddha lays down the gauntlet with his teaching and says, this is true. Disprove it at your own, try and disprove it at your own peril. Or not, I mean, not really peril, actually. Go ahead and test it. And you will see for yourself that it's true. And so Buddhism is a path of self-exploration, where you look for yourself, you see for yourself, and you're able to at once verify what the Buddha said, but at the same time free yourself from so much suffering often that you didn't even fully realize that you were suffering from. Buddhism is not a practice of increasing suffering. Obviously, quite the opposite. Buddhism is a path to happiness, a path to freedom from suffering, a path to peace. And so, don't be upset by this. Like, be uncomfortable with it. Being uncomfortable is an important part of the process of change. But face it and take it as a challenge. It's great in how disturbing these kind of teachings are. The teaching on suffering, basically, is because it shakes you up. It's like a splash of cold water. Take you out of your mindless routine of facing life and old age and sickness and death, only to do it all again and again and again and again, up and down and all around. Wakes you. This is a splash of cold water to wake us up and help us gradually untangle the tangle and free ourselves from suffering. But it's not as though reading and learning and accepting these teachings is suddenly going to make you have to let go of all the wonderful things that you cling to. You're not going to suddenly lose your passion for things. You may gradually weaken it, shake it up, challenge it by realizing that some of our passion, at the very least, is very, very bad for us. Until we gradually see that there's no benefit to any of it, it's only stress, suffering.
Actually,
Sorry.
oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Bante. That's very clarifying. But just the one phrase comment. It is so fundamentally true that there's no counter argument to it. So, I mean, it's just so fundamental. I mean, that's it.
Well, the counter argument is to get very angry and disgusted and criticize it as being pessimistic and ignorant, or
well, I mean, aside from the
because
seeing
it's
of suffering,
revolting to people who are it's actually incredibly unpleasant to hear these things.
I mean, the reaction to it is separate, but fundamentally, if you just go on logic, there's no counter logic to it.
But the problem is, what I was trying to address is the fact that we're not very logical. And so it can turn people off to hear these things because they're not really seeing clearly. And because of the way it sounds like someone is threatening your happiness and is perhaps path to seek out suffering, right? If I give up all these things, that's just torture. It's the kind of thing a drug addict would say. But you see, we're taught by society to seek out pleasure. Do what makes you happy, right? Follow your heart. It's funny how in Thai, I had to explain to Thai people sometimes how in the West, following your heart is actually a good thing, because in Thai, the very same phrase is generally a criticism. ตามใจมากเกินไป follow your heart too much. Or if you want to dismiss someone, you say, do what you want. ตามใจ.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, we're taught to seek out pleasure. We're taught to do what you like. And we're taught that that's happiness. It's difficult. It's important to be sensitive to that. There's a lot of people who aren't ready to hear the Dhamma, but maybe if they can see it in the right light, and understand their reactions in the right light, then maybe they can start to pay attention to those reactions and see that they're what causes stress and suffering even without Buddhism.
I just wanted to mention that something I remembered something in regards to the previous so the ending of the last paragraph, basically, where it says nothing exists except at the moment of seeing, hearing, etc. And you try to explain non-self, Bante, and I was just going to say that I remember that sutta where the Buddha says to Rohitasa that nothing exists outside of this. I mean, no reality exists outside this body, right? And then that if anybody or anybody here would understand that we can't know for sure what's outside, and it's not even worth discovering, or deciphering
I don't think
there.
it's a bit of a nitpick, but I don't think he does say that nothing exists outside the body. I think it's a bit irrelevant to talk about whether. I don't think that's what he said, and it kind of is not important. No, does this exist or does it not exist, right? But what he says is that, basically, as you're saying, is that it's irrelevant. It's not important. You can't find the end of the universe outside of this body. It's the most powerful thing that he says. Yeah, because Rohitasa he was flying through the universe like an astronaut, and he went until he died, and they still didn't find the end of the universe. And the Buddha said, "Oh, you're not going to find the end of the end of the world. You're not going to find the end of the world that way. But the end of the world can be found in this 6-foot frame. Imasamingeva bayamamajje kalevare." I'm probably mangling it, but I remember the Pali. Within this 2-meter frame.
Yes, that's what I was looking for. This quote, basically. Thank you.
In other words, the unbearable physical and mental distress are dreadful intrinsic sufferings known as the suffering of pain, dukkha. Everyone fears them. Thus, painful feeling, otherwise known as the aggregate of attachment to feeling, is the real truth of suffering.
Yeah, not the real truth. Don't take that to mean it's the only truth of suffering, but it is real suffering, really and truly suffering, obviously. But he's going to talk about the other two feelings as well as also being suffering. Dukkha is painful feelings are suffering, really and truly. Doesn't take much. There's no controversy there.
Pleasant sensations in the body and mind are agreeable, delightful, and enjoyable while they last, but when they vanish, they are replaced by discomfort and dissatisfaction, which of course is suffering. This kind of suffering, known as the suffering of change, viparinama dukkha, occurs through change from a pleasant condition to something different and is terrible. To the noble ones, pleasant sensations are like an ogress who bewitches people with her beauty and makes them insane. For them, pleasant sensations are dreadful aggregates of attachment, just the same, and constitute the real truth of suffering. At the same time, pleasant sensations are transitory and require constant conditioning effort to maintain the status quo. This, of course, is burdensome and is therefore also real suffering. The remaining neutral feeling and the aggregates of attachment to form, perception, mental formations, and consciousness are always in a state of flux, always transitory, and therefore, to the noble ones, they are also dreadful. As death awaits constantly, having to rely on the impermanent aggregates of attachment for support is dreadful, like living in a building that shows signs of collapsing at any moment.
Yeah, important to understand with this teaching is that this isn't just a intellectual instruction to help convince you to give these things up. He's also describing, and more importantly, describing the result of actual practice. When you apply mindfulness, this is what you see. You don't have to intellectually analyze this, rationalize, and decide whether you agree or disagree. It's not really important. Even if you agree intellectually, it's not really all that valuable even. Because you can say, oh, pleasant sensations, they change, and yeah, so I should just avoid them. And when they arise, I have to chastise myself and say, hey, those are changing. No, when you pay attention to them, when you pay attention to pain, when you pay attention to pleasure, when you pay attention to calm, why these are so important to pay attention to is because you will see this. You'll see that the pleasant sensations are constantly interspersed with all the stress involved with having to seek them out. It can be quite stressful even to engage in pleasure. Pain, to see that it's unpleasant, is a very important and very powerful moving experience because you can't escape it. So avoiding painful feelings is not the goal. It's not saying, oh, this is dukkha, so run away from it. It's not saying that at all. It's saying realize that it's suffering. And what that does is not make you want to run away from it. It makes you realize that you can't run away from it. You need something better than running away from pain, chasing after pleasure. You don't even have to run away from pleasure. And neutral feelings as well. This is what you see. That even the calm feeling, you will never see this. Calm is very tricky. And I've talked about this before, how important it is to note calm feelings and why we're always on after meditators to make sure they note the calm feelings, because you won't see it. You won't see the suffering in calm feelings. It sounds absurd, really. And most meditators who have experienced calm will agree that it is kind of absurd to think that neutral feelings are suffering. What kind of terrible teaching is that? They also require stress in order to maintain. You have to work at them and work at them. And just because you've worked 1,000 years at them doesn't mean they're going to last. As you stop working at them, they stop arising. And you get tired of them. This isn't intellectual. This is what actually happens. You get tired of them. Doesn't mean you stop feeling calm. On the contrary, you generally feel more calm. There's an increase in calm as you stop seeking out the calm, stop clinging to it. But you see that the calm is not painful. That's not what it's saying. Because remember, this is all contingent on you clinging. Because even painful feelings are not stressful. Not in and of themselves. They're not the problem. The problem is that you cling to them. Painful feelings, we cling in the sense of wanting to escape them. Pleasant feelings, we want them to stay. Same with neutral feelings. And we work and we work and we work and to no end. We just suffer from all the work that we do in regards to the three feelings. So you see this, by paying attention, by facing painful feelings, not running away from them, by facing pleasant feelings, not denying them, by facing calm feelings, not ignoring them, by facing them, by paying attention, by observing them, this will come. You'll start to become what the Buddha called nibbida. Nibbida is a very important point in the practice where you start to get tired of chasing after these things. You just get tired of them. You start to lose your excitement about pain, pleasure, and calm. It doesn't mean any of them stop arising. It just, you free yourself. It's liberating. You become independent. Anisito jo viharati. Nachakinchi loke upadhyati. Not clinging to anything in the world.
The transitory nature of the aggregates of attachment requires constant effort at conditioning for the maintenance of the status quo. This suffering of conditioned states, sankhara dukkha, the burdensome task of conditioning, is also dreadful. Therefore, to the noble ones, not only the pleasant or unpleasant feelings, but also the remaining aggregates of attachment are also the truth of suffering. As all the five aggregates are regarded by the noble ones as really terrible suffering, the Blessed One said in conclusion of the definition of the truth of suffering, in brief, the five aggregates of attachment, otherwise called mind and matter, which could cause attachments as I, mine, regarding them as permanent, blissful, self, or ego, are just dreadful suffering. Sadhu.
So we're about to hit the hour. We can stop our reading there, and we can give some time now for some discussion on the reading if anyone wants to say anything or ask questions regarding the reading or text. If anyone has a question, feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand if you're in the audience, and we can invite you on.
Hello together. I have a question. What are mental formations again?
Mental formation, sankhara, I think. It's the fourth aggregate. Basically the processing of an experience. So there's the experience, the feeling, the recognition of it, and then the processing. Sankhara is basically the processing of it. So it includes liking it, disliking it, identifying with it, or being mindful of it. It includes all of that.
Okay, well, if there are no questions regarding the text, we will now transition into our Q&A portion, where it can be a little bit more broad and you are able to ask questions related to your meditation practice, or if it's Buddhist related. If you still have questions regarding the text, you can ask that now too, still. Bhante, I would like to present you with the first question that we have. The question is, I was walking mindfully, and my awareness suddenly shifted to my hands and feet. Then I started feeling anxious and had a severe panic attack. I am worried this might happen again if I walk mindfully. Any advice?
Yeah, well, but mindfulness is about facing things. Now, for some people, that's going to be difficult, maybe even impossible. But that's the goal, is to be able to face the anxiety. Kind of a little bit funny that you mentioned being worried about it happening again, because it's that worry that's perpetuating the anxiety and ultimately creating the panic attacks. I mean, to some extent, the thing is, it's not the panic attack. The panic attack isn't even the biggest problem. And that's what you have to start to see. The biggest problem is that you're not really paying attention. But when you're worried, you have to start noting worried. You're anxious, noting the anxiety. Stop walking, put your feet together, say anxious. And even when you're having a panic attack, when it becomes physical, when you become, people curl up in a ball or they freeze, the physical manifestations, even that, just physical. Yes, it can have ramifications. If you have a panic attack at work or something, yeah, absolutely. So that worries people. But from the perspective of mindfulness, it's not a problem. And so during the meditation practice, it's not a problem to have a panic attack or what you call a panic attack. You just have to break it up into what's actually happening, because as you do that, you lose the anxiety. Anxiety is actually a really simple one. It seems completely insurmountable. Anxiety is crippling, but it's actually quite simple and quite quick to change. Not to free yourself from. But if you stop looking at the anxiety as the problem, because that's what happens. You're worried about your anxiety. That's exactly why the anxiety becomes a panic attack, is because you're worried about the worried about the worried about the worried. Each time you're worried, you get worried about it. It becomes a feedback loop. This happens with lots of things. Anger, you get angry. Oh, you make me so angry. You get more angry at that until you're thrown into a rage. But seeing the anxiety as an experience rather than a problem is the solution. And you start facing it and just seeing it. Now I'm anxious. Now I'm keeled over and lying in a ball, or even passing out. If you can note even some of that, you'll start to change your perspective on reality and be less anxious. But meditation can force you to face things that you may not quite be ready to face. I don't know if that's quite true, but it can feel like that. Because ultimately, the more you experience, the more familiar you become with things, the less power they have over you, which is why mindfulness is really so effective. Because facing things makes you more familiar with them. And the more familiar you are with things, the more you understand them. And the less power they have over you.
Bhante, the next question that we have. I was once looking down from the top floor of a tall mall, and a voice in my head said, "Jump." It made me fear myself. Is this common? Does this come from ideas shared by other people?
It's interesting, no? The idea that I think it could in some rare cases. I mean, I think this is more of a fiction thing where you hear these stories about people get implanted ideas by ghosts or spirits, but I think in some cases it could happen. But not to scare you, but the point is, I mean, for the most part, it's just coming from your own mind. And it's because our minds are organic. We're still just primates, Not so long ago, we were living in trees or living in forests and not wearing clothes. We were running around naked. Not that long ago that as a species, that's where humanity was. We could have been anywhere, could have been in heaven, could have been as a different kind of animal, probably all over the place. But this form that we're in now is organic, and so our brain is suggesting a lot of things to us, mostly to eat and to do other very primitive sorts of things, very carnal sorts of things. And so the brain presents us with all sorts of things, all sorts of meaningless responses. Like the idea of jumping could come from being a bird in your past life, right? I'm now mixed things up because actually it's not just the physical, it's also the mental. But there's lots of, I'm just meaning to say there's lots of things. So it can be physical about this form, but yeah, it could be that in a past life you were a bird. So you have that in your mind suggesting you to jump. Could also be the primate in you wanting to jump from one tree to the next. Regardless of what it is, it's not dangerous, is really the most important thing to say. There's nothing dangerous about having thoughts of killing yourself, thoughts of jumping off a building, thoughts of harming others. I hear people use this term intrusive thoughts. And they have this term for it, that it's somehow meaningful, but all thoughts are really intrusive. They come of their own accord. It's not us thinking. They're a part of a process that we call thinking. And there's lots of weird reasons for them to arrive. But the thoughts themselves don't have any ethical significance, meaning they're not bad thoughts or good thoughts. Thoughts are just thoughts. What's bad and good is how you process them. Bad and good is squarely in the realm of sankharas, mental formations. After you think, the moment after you think, once you have a thought, what do you think about that thought? Do you like that thought? Do you dislike that thought? Do you identify with that thought? Are you afraid of that thought? This is where the ethics comes in. This is where karma comes in. This is where suffering begins, or freedom from suffering. So yeah, it's an important question because lots of intrusive thoughts can arise. Lots of random, strange thoughts can arise. And if you stress about them, they can take power over you. They can have great power over you. Cause people to think, maybe I do want to kill myself, right? There's no I wanting to kill myself. I mean, this thought just came out of nowhere. It doesn't have any meaning behind just being the thought of jumping. So if you're mindful, you can quickly note it, and the clarity of mind will make you clearly see that jumping would not be a good idea. Not much point in jumping off a tall building. And so you just don't do it. If, on the other hand, you get stressed about it, these kind of things, again, they can take on a life of their own. We had a monk once who had lots of intrusive thoughts, and he listened to them, and he ended up dumping gasoline on himself and lighting himself on fire, thinking he was going to become enlightened. He wouldn't tell me some of his thoughts. He said, I have these thoughts, and I just can't tell you. They're unspeakable. And I tried to say to him, I wasn't a teacher. I was just, well, I like to push my opinion on others at times. So I did. I tried to explain to him. They're just thoughts. The thoughts aren't the problem. Just note them. The problem was he took them seriously.
Bhante, here is the next question. Do you think the noting technique is suitable for everyone? If no, who is it not for? Or what is a sign you should quit doing the noting technique?
I think it's only not suitable for people for whom enlightenment is not suitable. What does that, I mean, the language you're using doesn't really, makes the answer no. When you say suitable, and I say, okay, so suitable for anyone for whom enlightenment is not suitable, and then it sounds ridiculous, right? Is enlightenment suitable for everyone? Yes. But language is difficult, because if by suitable you mean capable of leading them to enlightenment, then mindfulness is capable of leading anyone to enlightenment for whom enlightenment, anyone who is capable of reaching enlightenment. Because that's not everyone. Some people are not capable of using mindfulness, so you could say it's not suitable for them, but you wouldn't. When you use the word suitable, the answer is yes, that it's suitable. It's suitable for everyone who can put it into practice, right? Because I guess technically it's not suitable for someone who can't put it into practice. Some people are just not able. You wouldn't say that. You wouldn't say, oh, you can't do it, therefore it's not suitable for you. Maybe you would. The only way that's true is if they can't attain, if they are unable to attain enlightenment. And there are people who are so mired in evil, who have done such terrible things that are just incapable of practicing noting. I like to explain noting as a mantra because it's more familiar with people, and it doesn't become something different from ordinary mantra meditation. It's important to understand that when people talk about noting technique, what they're actually talking about is just mantra meditation, which is very basic and very core to anyone's understanding of meditation at all. It's the most common form of meditation. You could say it's the primary form of meditation, using a mantra. I think you could say it's not the only type of meditation, but as far as a technical application of the mind, cultivate wholesome qualities or useful qualities, mantra meditation is the way to go. There are just two kinds of mantra meditations. A mantra is a concept. It's a panyati. The object of the mantra is either a concept or reality. There was a famous monk, I guess there is still a famous monk in Thailand, who was going around saying that noting is wrong. Well, noting is not vipassana because it's a concept. It's a panyati. So banyat, in Thai they say banyat, which means panyati. Panyati meaning it's conceptual. And I had students at the time coming to talk to me. I had one person who was so believe that what you're doing is wrong, and they come to you. This woman, I think, actually came with a friend. So she came, she sat back while her friend came up to talk to me. And somehow it came about her teacher. Yeah, I'm going a bit off on a tangent, I apologize, but it's interesting because he said or she said to me something about, I can't remember, it was many years ago, how this practice, she doesn't follow it because she was told it's a panyat, it's a concept. I can't remember if at the time, but I had heard this before. I think at the time I was ready to answer because I had heard this before. Yeah, I think this was what it was, is I had just figured it out because I'd heard this before and I was like, couldn't really explain what was wrong about that statement or really where it was coming from. Because it's true that words are conceptual. When you say rising, well, rising is a concept. I mean, the word rising is a concept. But that's the key, is that there are two kinds of panyati, two kinds of concepts. There's the word as a concept, the name of things as a concept, which is called nama panyati. And then there's conceptual objects which have names. And those objects are called aramana panyati, conceptual objects. In samatha meditation, you have a conceptual object that you give a name to. So you have two concepts. The thing that you're as an object, it's only conceptual, means it doesn't exist. You imagine something. This is why it's only called samatha meditation, why it could never be vipassana. Because the object is conceptual. The name of everything is conceptual. The name of reality is conceptual. The elements have names. That means they have nama panyati, conceptual name, but the object is not a concept. When the stomach rises, that experience of tension is not a concept. It's absolutely not a concept. And this is where the confusion, this monk was doing people a real disservice. And he's quite famous in Thailand as a teacher. So it's important that he be corrected. He's distributing wrong information when it's conflating two things. When you say it's concept, you've missed the point. Everything has a name, and all names are conceptual. That's the difference. That's why vipassana is different from samatha, not because of using a mantra. When you apply the name to reality, the fact that the object is reality is real. means that the mantra does its work of focusing and strengthening the mind. The object does the work of teaching you about reality. It's quite simple. It really shouldn't be controversial, but people get it mixed up. And they separate mantra meditation from noting practice and say noting is this Burmese idea, which is ridiculous. Why did the Mahasi Sayadaw and his teacher have us use a word? Because it's what they've been doing from time immemorial. It's what Buddhists have always done. It's what's in the ancient texts. It's even, you could say, what the Buddha talked about in the Satipatthana Sutta. He said, Gachanto wa gacchami ti bhajanati. Gacchami means I am walking, but it's one word, so you don't have to say I am walking. You just say gacchami. Just like in English, we say walking, walking when you walk. Kind of caught off track, but you got my answer anyway. Suitable for everyone, as long as they're able to practice it, which means their mind isn't so corrupt that they're unable to meditate. Not using a mantra at all just doesn't seem that useful. I don't know why you would give up the usage of a mantra when it's such an established and useful technique. Not to mention very much described as the this proximate cause of mindfulness. This is important for your question. I've talked about this many times, but the actual noting is, or the use of a mantra is called tira sanya. Sanya meaning recognition. You recognize something as seeing. That happens automatically. You don't have to say seeing in order to know that you're seeing. By saying to yourself seeing, you're strengthening the recognition, tira sanya, and this, according to the ancient text, as basis, as proof, as backing for what I'm saying, is the proximate cause of mindfulness. So it is essential for the cultivation of mindfulness. Or sati, which doesn't really translate as mindfulness. Sati means remembering the object as it is, not forgetting it in favor of some kind of extrapolation or perception of it.
Chi, can you please mute yourself?
Sorry, I thought I muted. Hold on. Am I muted now?
Not yet.
Okay, I will disconnect and I come back. Thank you.
Okay, Bhante, the next question that we have. What do we mean by doubt as a hindrance in meditation? I see that it depends. Doubting a scam call or an unhealthy lifestyle could be wise. How do I recognize the unhealthy one and what causes it?
I can't hear someone speaking.
Yes, I was speaking, Bhante. Can you hear me?
Am I muted? Bhante, you're not muted. No one else is speaking. Okay. I see a new question up, but I don't hear it.
Can anyone hear me?
I do, Subutsu.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Bhante, you can't hear
Okay,
me,
I will
Bhante.
disconnect and come back. Hello?
Yes, Bhante, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, there was some kind of technical issue there. Not sure what happened. But I will go ahead and read the next question out loud. The question is, Bhante, what do we mean by doubt as a hindrance in meditation? I see that it depends. Doubting a scam call or an unhealthy lifestyle could be wise. How do I recognize the unhealthy one, and what causes it?
An important question, but there's a misunderstanding. Doubt is never wise. And you can understand this because if you were wise, you wouldn't have doubt. Like, for example, if you were wise to the scam, you wouldn't have doubt. You'd just know it was a scam. But you might have a counter argument there, but let me explain. A wise wisdom on a deeper level than just knowing whether a scam call is a scam call. Wisdom means absence from any form of doubt whatsoever. A person who is wise, if I can describe it, a person who is wise during a scam call may not know that it is a scam call and may be unsure as to whether it is a scam call, but they will have no doubt in their mind because they will have no doubt that they don't know. They will have certainty that they are not aware, and as a result, they will act wisely, firmly established in the knowledge that they don't know. Right? This is kind of like Socrates, how Socrates acted. Was Socrates full of doubt? Not really. I mean, I'm not mean to prop Socrates up as some. I mean, he was pretty great, I guess, but I think he was pretty great. We don't really know. I mean, we have these books, and some of what he says is persuasive, but certainly he is an example of not much doubt, because he knew, as he said, he knew that he didn't know, that kind of thing. So why it's an important question is because you have to understand what is meant by hindrance. Hindrance is something that weakens the mind. Doubt can be a propellant to better things, just like any of the hindrances can be. In the indirect sense that once you start to realize how bad they are, you change. For example, doubt, based on your example. Suppose you're doubting everything or you're doubting some things. Once you see how unsustainable, untenable, how harmful and dangerous it is to be full of doubt, well, you'll seek out knowledge and you'll seek out wisdom. Well, you'll do one or the other. You'll seek out knowledge, which is not the best way. Or better yet, you'll seek out wisdom, which is different. Knowledge would be knowledge about the specific situation. Find out if it is a scam call or investigate. Wisdom would be, as I said, to give up trying and worrying about such things. To be free from the need to know, the need to be certain. To start from the fact that you don't know and be confident in that. For the very important reason that, as I said, doubting, as with all the hindrances, weakens the mind. That's why they're hindrances. So no doubt is valuable. Doubt is always harmful. But indirectly, can it lead to good things? Yes. Evil can lead to good indirectly. Because most obviously, because once you feel the results of evil, you get propelled to start wanting to do good. But I mean, obviously, most of the time you do evil and you just get more and more evil and things just get worse and worse. But ultimately, this is why even the most evil of people should not be discounted, because ultimately they have to learn their lesson. You can only fall so far before it becomes unsustainable and you start to change. That's why hell isn't permanent. Nobody stays in hell forever. It's unsustainable, no matter how stubborn you are. Samsara is more patient than you are, more stubborn than you are.
The next question, Bhante. In life, whenever I feel like I'm developing equanimity, some event makes me lose my balance and makes me question whether I am really developing it. How do I deal with this constant self-doubt?
Well, it sounds like, I mean this in a fairly, I don't mean to sound harsh, but it sounds like you're not really developing equanimity. I mean, kind of indirectly you are, or incidentally you are, but what's more important is that you're developing self and control and ego and delusion. And what you're experiencing is the result of that. Because you think I am developing, and you perceive it as something constant, something sustainable, something controllable. And samsara is saying, no, it's not. Samsara is showing you that it's impermanent, suffering, and non-self. Make me lose my balance. Yeah. The idea that you had any balance to begin with is the problem. The problem here is self, because a person who is enlightened is independent. When there is a throwing off of balance, they don't see it as I am being thrown off balance. They don't see it as something that was stable being threatened, because they've had it all threatened and they've come to terms with that. They've let go of that. I think the real problem problem for you is seeking out equanimity. You should never seek out equanimity. You should seek out wisdom, which affords you a profound sense of equanimity. Because true equanimity would be, I'm equanimous as whether I have the equanimity or I lose it. I'm equanimous about that. That would be true equanimity. It's less of a feeling and more of a perspective. It's based on wisdom, not control. So I think your best advice is to stop fixating on equanimity. I know there are some traditions that emphasize it, and I think that's not great when they emphasize and try to train you to be equanimous. It should be the result, not the practice.
Bhante, the next question that we have. During meditation, after suffering, focusing only on bodily sensations sometimes brings pleasant feelings in the head area, even though pain is present. Can you explain why and what this means?
I don't have explanations as to why things happen the way they do. I mean, the explanation, this is what my teacher would say, it's impermanent. He would often ask people like this about whether they found it strange. So I will ask you, do you find it strange, unexpected? And the answer is always yes. It's that which is important. The most important point of what you're experiencing is the strangeness, the fact that strange things in general can happen. So rather than explain to you why something is happening, I brush it off by saying it's impermanence, but how important it is to appreciate that strange things can happen. Seeing strange things happen in general frees you or loosens up your expectations. It weakens your grasp on the way you think things should be and opens you up to the fact that unexpected things are possible. That helps facilitate letting go. That's all that's important about that. Besides the fact that you should be noting also the pleasant sensations and liking it and so on. I mean, I guess another thing I would say is we don't really use that kind of language, so I'm not sure you're practicing according to our tradition even. When you say focusing on bodily sensations, I mean, what are you referring to? Are you referring to practice in some other tradition or technique? Or are you referring to noting the rising and falling? Because you shouldn't really be focusing in any profound sense. You should just be noting. So when you notice the stomach rising, you say rising. When you notice the stomach falling, you say falling. Because if you start doing what you're saying by focusing on bodily sensation, my concern is that you're probably cultivating samatha, this kind of fixed and focused on something in particular. You can create great states of calm and pleasure that way, but it's not very mindful.
Bhante, the next question that we have: in meditation, is it common to sense our body growing bigger than the room, than the house, the country, and finally becoming so big I have to shake it off?
Yes, that's actually pretty common. Well, not perhaps to the extent that you're experiencing it, but not uncommon. For most people, it's just going to be a little bit of extension. And the explanation for this is that the body doesn't exist in the first place. The body is conceptual. It's based loosely on our perception of feelings, the perception of sensations in the body. So you sense the tension and the heat and the cold and the hard and the soft and bodily sensations. And that again and again gives you this conception of the boundary of the body. As you get stronger concentration, that loosely held connection with the physical sensations weakens. And often you're not even paying attention. Your mind is so focused on one thing that you won't pay attention to the sensations around the body. So you lose that. Because of losing that, this familiarity or this inclination, yes, to or habit of the mind to check in and see where the body is located starts to get distorted. And what you're experiencing is when the mind fixates on that distortion, usually gets interested in it. It's interesting, it's exciting. Maybe this is something important. So when the mind fixates on it, it makes more of it and it becomes a real thing. It can even become a practice where you, as you say, extend it out to the universe. And meditation practices like that actually exist. But they don't have any, they're not vipassana, they don't lead to wisdom. They can lead to some very, very strange experiences, good and bad. But they're problematic because they're conceptual, just conceiving of the body at that size. It's a good example of how concepts are different from reality, because concepts can be anything. Reality can only be the way it is. No matter what you think it should be or want it to be, it will wake you up.
Bhante, here is the next question. I have noticed mindfulness seems to cause emotions. Interrupting my pleasant daydream with mindfulness and forcing myself to be clear causes my mind to get angry and stressed. Is this normal?
Why cause emotions? Is that what it says?
Yes. First part is cause emotions, and the second part is it causes my mind to get angry and stressed.
Yeah, well, I mean, this can happen in the same way it happens to a drug addict. The commentary uses an example of a baby cow. When you want to train a baby cow, you take it away from its mother, and all it does is wail and whine and yearn for its mother. And the mind is the same. When cruel people when they want to train a baby ox to be a big productive ox, they take it away from its mother, cruelly tie it to a stake, put a stake in the ground, tie a rope to the stake, tie a rope the other end to the ox, and then they just leave it there. And no matter what this baby ox tries to do, it can't get back to its mother. And it just whines and complains and whines and complains until finally it gives up. And it goes and it rests by the post. That's just what happens. So that's cruel. Mindfulness is kind of cruel in that way as well. We take you away from your mother of sensual pleasure, and we tie you to the post of the present moment. We tether you to the present moment with mindfulness, which is the rope. No matter how your mind whines and complains, mindfulness keeps you tethered to the post until eventually the mind gives in to the cruel practice and lies down, stops thinking about its mother. I think that's about probably what's happening. I mean, you shouldn't be forcing yourself. I guess it's more complicated because rather than forcing yourself to be clear, you should focus on the pleasant daydreams with mindfulness. Rather than interrupting them with mindfulness, you should focus on them with mindfulness, or apply mindfulness to them. If you want to dream, you say wanting. If you like, say liking. That's the most powerful practice there is. When you actually do that, you free yourself from the craving and the need for those pleasant things. You don't stop feeling pleasant necessarily, but the pleasure comes and goes. But you do stop the liking of the pleasure, the wanting of the pleasure, and the needing of the pleasure, and the suffering when it's not there.
Bhante, here is the next question. During daily life, when we are performing an activity such as walking, and an experience like tension or anxiety arises, how should we note it? Note it once and return to the activity?
Well, with tension isn't so important, but anxiety, with the hindrances, I would especially say you should stop and note them until they go away. As best you can. You kind of have to be a little flexible when talking about noting in daily life outside of formal practice. We don't have a strict format for it. With good reason, because it's chaotic, so you do what you can. The fact that you're asking this question is great because it means you're interested in proper practice, but don't be too worried about doing it exactly right. With the caveat of saying that it's important to note hindrances whenever they arise, because they're hindrances. They weaken the mind. Anxiety is part of the hindrances. Make sure you note it. Other things you don't have to be too concerned. Note them once or twice, and you can just go back to your main activity. During daily life, if there's too much, I mean, the hindrances are always going to be important, but apart from that, focusing on just The 4 postures of the body: walking, standing, sitting, and lying. And the 6 senses: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking. That's a good framework for basic practice outside of formal meditation.
Bhante, the next question that we have: for lay people, would you say it's more beneficial to practice frequent, shorter moments of mindfulness or more formal sessions of meditation?
You want to find the middle way here. This is an example of where moderation actually is important. Not too many short rounds and not too few long rounds. If you're going to do longer sessions, it's contrary to what you might normally think. You should actually be doing more of them. If you only have time to do less meditation, if you're only going to do fewer sessions, then they should be shorter. But if you have lots of time to do increase the length of it. So there's a balance. Not lots of short sessions, but not only a few long sessions. Be somewhere in the middle. I mean, as a guideline, twice a day, 30 minutes walking, twice a day, 15 minutes walking, 15 minutes sitting twice a day is a good introductory form of meditation practice. 15 twice a day. Up to, 30 twice a day, 30 minutes walking, 30 minutes sitting twice a day is not easy for everyone to do. People who are working all day, that sort of thing. But that's about the limit. Once you start, like you can do 3 times a day, 30, and then even 4 times a day, 30. But if you get into like 5 times a day, then you start to increase past 30. But if you did 1 hour, once or twice a day, I would say that's the problem, because the point is it's too stressful. It's too hard on your system. It's just push yourself into such formal practice without doing anything the rest of the day, any mindfulness the rest of the day. But you're actually talking also about formal versus informal. Informal meditation will rarely, if ever, be as valuable as formal meditation. So generally speaking, you should absolutely do formal meditation every day, not just rely on informal meditation to bring progress. But both are valuable.
Bhante, the next question is: I was having lust and thought it would not go away. I tried to observe it, then suddenly, I randomly wanted to brush my teeth. Is this the kind of impermanence we want to catch?
Yeah. Yeah, impermanence, non-self, even suffering. Yeah, I mean, don't put too much weight on it, but yeah, you're seeing what we expect to see. But the point is you have to see that lots and lots of times. And as you see that lots and lots of times, your mind will start to get tired of it and just stop preferring one over the other because it just sees it's just chaotic, unpredictable. Stop trying to control and predict and seek out certain experiences. So that's what slowly weakens the defilements until the mind can see clear enough to really let go.
Bhante, here is the next question. The feeling of breathing in and out at the nose tip is a real experience, not a concept. So focusing the mind on breathing is still considered samatha. Is this correct?
You're contradicting yourself. You're saying it's real, so it's samatha, which isn't true. If something is real, it's vipassana. That's the point. Feeling, there's no such thing as a feeling of breathing in and out, but that's kind of nitpicking. But I want to point out that you could be doing one of two things. Focusing on the breath going in and out is samatha, because it's not real. That's conceptual. But the feeling is not of breath going in and out, but it is the feeling that comes from breathing in and out. But the feeling is a feeling of heat or cold or pressure. One of those two, the heat and the cold or the pressure. If you're focused on that and not concerning yourself with the in and the out, there's different, anapanasati has different kinds. There's ganana naya, which means the method or practice of counting. So when you say in one, out one, or even just in one, in two, in three, that kind of thing, that's called ganana, counting. The second is anubandhana. Anubandhana means following. You follow anubandhana naya, which means the method of following the breath. Breath coming in, out. That's also samatha. Because again, so counting is obviously not real. It's conceptual, and the following is also not real. But the actual experience, which is sampuchana naya, is the experience of the contact, and that can either be at the stomach or at the nostrils, doesn't matter. That's real. If you focus on that, that will allow you to see the three characteristics, and so no, that is not samatha. That is vipassana.
Bhante, the next question. During meditation, I always get scared when glowing lights start showing up. I try to note the fear, but after a while it takes over and becomes disruptive. How do I fix this issue?
Things aren't disruptive and you don't have to fix them. What you're seeing is non-self. Because you generally expect that when you note it, it goes away. I'll note this and it will go away, and then it doesn't go away, and that disturbs you even more. So what you're learning is that this fear is not under your control. What you're probably not seeing so clearly is how you're perpetuating it, because you are perpetuating it. It's useful to try and note the seeing first when there's no fear, because that will help you, that will prevent the fear from arising, as Mahasi Sayadaw was explaining. When you actually note the experiences, there's not the reactions of liking and disliking. But none of it's a problem that you have to fix. What you have to fix is your delusion about it, your ignorance about it. So you fix that by just facing it and studying it. Doesn't matter how long the fear lasts, just pay attention to it. You'll start to see more clearly that you're actually perpetuating it. And you'll stop perpetuating it because you'll be mindful of it. You have to, it's like a stare down. It's like a game of chicken. You just have to face it and until it blinks, until it turns away, until it disappears. No matter how long that takes, just keep saying afraid, afraid. Doesn't matter. It's not interruptive. It's not disruptive. It's meditation. It's an object of meditation. To say afraid, afraid. When it goes, because it will go, and when you start to notice when it goes, you can just say seeing, seeing. Because what you're doing most likely is not saying seeing. And the fear disappears, you notice the seeing again, and you get afraid again because you're not mindful. If when the fear goes, you say seeing, seeing, the fear won't arise. Well, eventually you'll get better at it, it just won't arise. It is a training, it's a something you have to work at. But before you work at it, change your perspective. These aren't problems that you have to fix. These are experiences you have to understand, face, learn about.
Bhante, here is the last question that we have in Tier 1. The question is, if we feel a lot of pain in our bodies that distract us from the breath and triggers the hindrances, should we switch to contemplating the body or the pain itself?
Absolutely. It sounds like you might not have read our booklet on how to meditate, but it or not doesn't matter. Yes. When you feel pain, pain isn't body, pain is feelings. There's 4 satipatthana, kaya, vedana, citta, dhamma. So, why I'm suspicious is because you use the word breath, and we're not technically focused on the breath, we're focused on the stomach rising and falling in this tradition. So from there, that's body, that's kaya. Vedana is when you feel pain or pleasure or calm. It'll focus instead on the pain and say pain, pain. Or happy, say happy, and just note it until it disappears. Once it's gone, then you go back again to the stomach. Citta is the mind. When you're thinking about the past or future, good thoughts, bad thoughts, whatever kind of thoughts, you just say thinking, thinking. And Dhamma is the teachings of the Buddha, starting with the 5 hindrances, so liking, disliking, drowsiness, distraction, doubt. So noting these, if you dislike the pain, for example, say disliking, disliking if you like something. Liking, drowsy, say drowsy or tired, tired. Distracted or worried, I say distracted or worried. And doubt, say doubting, doubting. Those are the 4 satipatthana, or foundations of sati, or mindfulness.
Thank you so much, Bhante. That will conclude our session for today. just want to express my personal gratitude for your time today and guiding us through our Dhammacakkappavattana study and reading, as well as answering everyone else's questions. Thank you so much, Bhante.
Sadhu. Thank you, Subitsu. Sibitsu. Thank you to everyone who stuck around, for those who helped out with the reading, making of the precept. For everyone on Discord who is just in the audience. My father's still here, it looks like. Got a good audience in Discord, and I also have an audience, 50 people in YouTube. So I appreciate everyone coming out. As always, it's a real great feeling to be here, to be doing something so dissimilar to what's going on in the world. The world is so full of fire burning, the fire of greed, the fire of anger, the fire of delusion. How absent that is here. It does come up, of course, but how very far we are from the world and the burning that's going on in the world around us. This is an island. This is a refuge. The Buddha said, take the Dhamma as your refuge. So we have this opportunity to take the Dhamma as our refuge. And it's just great to see people taking the opportunity, and I want to appreciate that you've all had the patience and the perseverance to stick with this and keep coming back week after week and helping out and contributing and even just listening. All of those of you who didn't ask questions but showed up and took part. It's a real honor to be in your presence, in the presence of such goodness, surrounded by such goodness. So thank you all for coming, and I wish to give you my blessing, my appreciation and confirmation of the goodness, that all the goodness that you've done here is not lost, doesn't disappear when you leave here. You carry it on with you. This becomes a part of your life, and it affects the life just as life around you affects your practice. Your practice affects your life. So all the power and of the goodness that you have performed on this occasion, along with all the goodness that you have done in the past, in this life and in past lives, may all of that propel you on your way. May the power of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, the power of all the goodness that you have performed, all the power of the goodness that I have performed on this occasion, all of the power of our appreciation of each other and each other's goodness, may all of this protect us. May it protect you all. Protect you all from suffering, protect you all from pain, protect you all from enmity, danger, calamity, protect you from all sorts of any sorts of bad thing. May you have a strong mind, and all good things, may all good things come to you in this life, long life, health, happiness, and strength. May your minds be clear and pure, and at the moment of death, may you die with a peaceful mind and a peaceful heart, and go on to peaceful things. May you cultivate all sorts of good things in the Buddha's teaching. Develop your minds to greater and greater clarity, purity, goodness, and strength of mind, that you may be able to progress along the path of the Buddha's teaching and find true peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering, which is the true goal of the Buddha's teaching and the true goal for all human beings to seek out in this life and in all lives to come. Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu.